Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Morello. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you for being here with us today, and I hope you've been enjoying the great programming that we've had both yesterday and today, and again tomorrow. This breakout session, as Kathy mentioned, is focused on how to incorporate technology into your daily operations. This is not just for solving the very difficult challenges of today, but also for how you can fortify your business for success well into the future. As far as format for this session, I'm going to introduce our speakers in just a moment. From there, we'll start with I'll have some questions directly with them, and then we're going to open it up for questions from all of you. So start thinking about different questions and comments that you might have, and I'll describe how you can do that in just a moment. As far as a few housekeeping items, you guys probably already have, but mute your microphone so you don't have the background noise, and turn off your camera. Helps with the bandwidth so everybody has a good view. You can do this with the toolbar. That's what version of Teams you're using, and whether you're on a PC or Mac. It's either in the middle of the screen, and you might have to mouse over the video to actually get the toolbar to pop up, or it's up above the video. You'll see the toolbar there. In order to ask a question, you can type it directly in the chat area, and I'll be going through and filtering those and then direct them to the appropriate speaker when we get there. If you want to contribute to an existing question or just be a part of the discussion, you can use the hand raise function on the toolbar and wait to be called upon. I'll call on you. You then can unmute yourself and ask the question. Finally, just a note that this meeting is being recorded. We're doing this so that we can have clips and quotes that we might want to use on for articles and that sort of thing, so that other business owners could benefit from this great information. With that, I'd like to introduce our two speakers. First is Gregg Terris. He's the Director of Strategic Initiatives for CDW's Small Business segment, and Spencer Ferguson, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Wasatch IT. I'm going to let each of the speakers do a quick intro, provide their background, their expertise, so you guys can get a sense of the types of questions they're going to be able to address. Gregg, why don't you go ahead first?
Sure. Gregg Terris, Director of Strategic Initiatives for our small business group here at CDW. And we define small business at CDW with about 250 employees and less. We focus on corporations, companies, basically non-government, non-education. With that being said, I've been with the company about 21 years in various sales roles, different departments, different segments and verticals. So today we work a lot with startups. We work with any other company that's a small business, small office, home office, and everything in between, to emerging companies and corporations, right, getting into the hundreds where they start to really define out and scale. A lot of experience working with many different companies, face-to-face interactions, as well as over the phone. And we work with hardware, software, and services at CDW.
Awesome. Thanks, Gregg. Spencer, a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Spencer Ferguson, I'm the CEO of Wasatch IT. I founded the company back in 2002, and we're essentially the IT department for about 500 businesses throughout Utah and beyond. Our headquarters is here in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have a branch office in southern Utah and St. George as well, with locations in Boise and Denver opening up here soon as also. Yeah, just a pleasure to be with you guys. I'm really passionate about operations and cybersecurity and processes, and looking forward to sharing.
That's awesome. Well, great. With that, why don't we just dive right in? We have 3 or 4 questions we'll get rolling with, and then the audience here can join our discussion. I'm going to start with a question really it's directed for both of you. Gregg, I'll have you go first. Basically, what is the single biggest technology hurdle that your small business clients are facing right now? and how are you helping them overcome it?
Sure, Mike. So when it comes, it's interesting because it's having a business thought process first, a discussion before technology, which is a lot of people are deciding what's their future as a company, and that leads to a technology discussion of a lot of people got sent home in April and had to scramble, and now they have to decide, is that a permanent thing? Have you been able to do your job and run your company just fine when everyone's working from home, or do you need to get back into an office? We've heard from many of our customers that the two most expensive costs that they deal with at a line item are real estate and payroll. And some have been able to get out of their real estate to save their payroll. If they could remove one, they might be able to save the other. So if I focus on just the people who've said, hey, moving forward, we're staying home, we can work from home, we can have a dispersed workforce at this point, they have to start really having the discussion of what does it take to support that? Because whatever we did in March and April or May is not the long-term solution. Most of us invest hundreds of thousands of dollars and build up an infrastructure now, because some of us thought it might be 2 weeks, maybe a month. Instead, a lot of us put Band-Aids in place. So I would say it comes into two technology categories that they're focused on right now, they're facing, which is collaboration tools and security. I know Spencer does a lot with security, so I'm going to table that for a minute, let take that. But for collaboration tools, it's really about, did you set a standard? Did you buy a standard, and have you optimized the standard? So some people, they got home and they're like, hey, let's just do conference calls, or let's get on web meetings, and what's free? What can you download? And everyone in their company was using something different, which you'll see, like, right away if a company's using a standard, because the first 5 minutes of your web call and your video chat either is spent everyone figuring out where everything is and how to unmute themselves and get video working, or the meeting starts right away. So really the start is, did you set a standard, or did everyone just get whatever they could to get going? Then did you actually use the pay version? Because oftentimes the free version of something, you get what you pay for it. You're not getting the rich feature sets and everything else you need. So it's important you start to invest inside, are we going to go Cisco WebEx, Zoom, Microsoft Teams? I could vouch for all of those. And my finding is they all work, but it's the one you use consistently that works best, because everyone gets used to the one they know. And that's important. You start to go down that path. And then it comes down to, what are you doing to optimize it? Have you ever trained your team? There's some free trainings online. You could just go to YouTube, but do they know how to use all the functions? Because there's a lot of tips and tricks they can use. We're a big Cisco WebEx shop, and I think it took us 4 months before anyone realized how to share video over WebEx. That you just have to click one button and you actually get the sound and the video, and it doesn't get choppy. But if you don't know about the one click, you're not sharing video properly. So there's a bunch of other tools, things like, I'll just mention even headsets. Something as simple as a headset with noise cancellation makes all the difference in the world of hearing that barking dog or not. We all have life going on around us, but it doesn't have to interfere with every business meeting you have. And then last one I'll touch on is cameras. There's a difference between a 1080p camera and a 4K one. And it really depends on how important the video quality is to your business and what you're doing. For some of you do want to invest in a 4K camera. There's something like a Logitech Brio is $200. You can make that investment for your employees and coworkers, and you could really make a difference, or you're going to get by with the camera that's on the notebook. Like, that's up to you and your business, but you got to decide what your standard. And that's really UC side of things, the communication and collaboration side of things. Security is a big one too, but Spencer, I know that's one of your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Cybersecurity is huge. It's been a growing concern for years, and I think the work from home conditions that we're all facing, or many of us are facing, have just added additional complications and complexities to the situation. And like you said, a lot of businesses didn't really think this through. They said, okay, we're going to be working home for a couple of weeks or a month. Just go home and work. Here's your laptop, or here's your computer. But I think there are a lot of things that a lot of businesses really didn't consider. Did they make sure that they had cybersecurity policies in place and that were based on SANS or NIST guidelines? And did they train their employees on these cybersecurity best practices and policies? Did they implement the technology that they needed to implement in order to make sure that working from home was truly secure? We can talk about mobile device management, the ability for a company or organization to control the data that's on a device when it's away from the network, remotely being able to remotely wipe data if a machine is lost, et cetera. Making sure that you have proper monitoring software and antivirus software installed on those machines to keep your employees safe. Are you using secure VPNs? Do you have the proper firewalls in place? and make sure you're using secure Wi-Fi, no network sharing. And just so many of these things to keep in mind that I think are, like you said, an afterthought when everybody was just kind of rushing to work from home. But now that we know it might be a little more permanent, I definitely feel you, Greg, when you mentioned that those two biggest line items. As a small business owner, it is the payroll and it is the real estate. And, now that we know that working from home for a lot of people is going to be more permanent, let's really be thoughtful about making sure that we have those proper security measures in place.
That makes perfect sense. I feel like even from my direct experience, not running a business, but working in a business at the U.S. Chamber, that one of the things that was an amazing saving grace for the Chamber was prior to the pandemic hitting, the IT side had integrated Office 365, which included Microsoft Teams. And they had actually rolled out Teams, like say last fall, to people that they could use it, and people weren't really, no one was using it really. And then everything got locked down, and everybody got a crash course in using Teams. And you think of even just a lot of the culture of the Chamber, where a lot of our abilities are around in-person meetings, right? And not just big things like this, but also just having some come to the office, doing that sort of thing. So a lot of folks were not that technology savvy, but it's really been remarkable, I would say, the transformation. And I know I'm sure everybody that's here on this meeting has seen it too, just how people have really gotten good at this. So anyway, with that, Gregg, I just wanted to, as businesses are, thinking about remote working for the long term, what kind of things do they need to keep in mind?
Sure. I would say that the two for me is internal, external of what's your customer experience like right now and what's your coworker experience or employee experience like. So when I say, let's start with the customer experience. There's things we did, like I said, when we scrambled. If I stay on unified communication or just collaboration, people are using their cell phone. And for some businesses, that's fine. That's a great long-term strategy. For others, is that the perception you want out there, or did you have a specific 800 number or extension you wanted people using, and have you invested there or not? So that's something where, is a single number reach important to you? Is it important that a customer can just dial the number they were dialing back in March and still get in touch with your coworker or your employee? If that's not important, that's fine. But for some people, there's all kinds of cloud solutions like RingCentral, 8x8, Cisco, Microsoft that can provide a single number reach. So you can get, whether it's a soft phone ringing on your cell phone. We set up at CW, we have Jabber. So we even have 5-digit calling from our cell phones. So people can call a 5-digit extension internally and it'll ring and it'll show like you're calling from your work number. So all of those are not very expensive solutions and things you can set up to really make it a seamless customer solution, experience. And that's the biggest thing is whether you choose to work from home continuously or not, your customers shouldn't know or care. And that, it's okay. It was okay at first when we're all scrambling. Now it's, can your business operate normal? And if so, make it so. And then on the employee side of things, don't just assume. One, have conversations, in-depth, one-on-one with management. Like, how's it going? What are you working off of? And you'd be surprised. There are people who are working off 2 monitors in the office that have been getting by in a notebook. There's some that had a really comfortable sit-stand operation in the office, and they've been hunched over, at a kitchen table for the last 5 months. And there's some long-term repercussions from that. And you really got to start to figure out where do we invest? Do people have a keyboard and mouse? Do people have 2 monitors if they need it? An external camera? Even as a sit-stand desk, a monitor arm, or even a chair that's comfortable. Those are really small investments that can go a long way with employee satisfaction and make it so people actually can enjoy the new normal and not still feel like they're getting by until something changes. Because we're kind of past getting by. You need to settle in on what the new normal is.
That's exactly right. An anecdote I'll throw in real quick from this morning. Someone on my team, I found out she's been working what you just described on a laptop, hunched over in the kitchen, and her shoulder and her neck has been bothering her a lot. And, I said, she said, you mentioned we can get monitors, we can get keyboards, we can do all that stuff, but I never did. Can I still do that? And so we're getting her set up, but yeah, it's amazing how I think so many people have taken it. It's like, well, it's probably just hopefully it's just another month, right? And then you can get back to your real life and all that. But I think we all know that this is all going to continue for a while. So, Spencer, I want to go back to security, because obviously with us all distributed at home, all kinds of different setups, all kinds of different, Wi-Fi, everything. What are really some of the biggest security risks that businesses are facing when they transition, from working in person to this remote workforce we're talking about?
Yeah, great question, Mike. And first, I'd like to kind of add to what Gregg was saying regarding your business phone systems. So you talked about having those VoIP phone systems, and our clients who had VoIP phone systems were in such better shape. They were able to transition their phone systems, right from the office to home, and people were able to use their laptops, just download a little app and be able to have full access, just like they were in the office with their phone systems. Because if you're like us, we don't want our employees using their personal cell phones to make business calls, right? So having that VoIP situation in place was so key for so many. And back to security, Mike. Cyber criminals are constantly concocting scams to get access to sensitive data, of course, and these most often take the form of phishing attacks and fraudulent emails. And you guys are very familiar with those. We all get them every day. People pretending to be somebody that they're not. They're pretending to be our vendors. They're pretending to be our coworkers, friends, and family. And of course, they're always trying to induce you to give up some financial information so that they can, perhaps get into your bank accounts, your credit cards, or of course, in the case of ransomware attacks, they're trying to hold your data for ransom to actually make you pay money to get access to your data again, which is very scary. And unfortunately, many small businesses just aren't aware of the best practices that are in place, and many of them just have to end up learning the hard way that cybersecurity really is something they need to be focusing on.
Yeah, it really, I think with obviously most businesses had a lot of time and put a lot of effort in it and investment into their office, right? And how they set it up and workflow. And again, with people bootstrapping, which has been awesome, that all employees have found ways to work and do different things. It's created a lot of opportunity for the bad people, right? To do those kinds of attacks. So, Gregg, you've already hit on this, but just want to throw it out there if you have more to share. What technological tools can help businesses adjust to this new normal? You mentioned the phone system stuff. I think a big one you touched on earlier also is video conferencing technologies, which obviously is so much a part of business life now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tools out there, and there are, touching on the security side too, absolutely I agree with Spencer. The end users can be your weakest link or your strongest defense against cybercrime. So it's important you keep employees educated on security risks through regular awareness training. So there's different companies that can do these trainings, and we fish our employees constantly and do things like send an email that looks like it's from UPS saying your package is ready, here's the tracking number. Right. And testing like that, or education trainings, those are important because it's going to happen all the time. And even more so, it's a shame when you spend all these dollars on these big solutions for security that protect the enterprise, but then the end user is exposed and can give access to the back door. So that's important. The other technologies, we talked about things like phones. Those are all really good, important. And a lot of it's software. I think one of the biggest things is just cloud. Spencer talked about if you had a VoIP, it was much easier to switch your phone system. That's true with everything. There's people who really struggle when you had physical servers and you had a data center or even a closet that you used to go to, a tech closet, and you left the office. There's still the IT person like, I got to go to the office today because something went down and I got to physically walk in there. And when things are in the cloud, it's a lot simpler to manage that, right? It makes you more mobile, makes you more capable of managing from anywhere. And I think that's something that we've seen a lot of people We were headed that way anyway, right? Like, it's not like the cloud's new and it hasn't been for years, and there's plenty of companies born in the cloud, but it definitely expedited a lot of transitions. There's companies that were thinking about or dipping their toes and had to go all in. And I think that's a big thing with technology. We've seen shift. We've seen it, just accelerate with everyone working from home. And what is the new normal? So you can just operate normally.
That it makes perfect sense. And really, Spencer, one thing as we're talking about these different technology solutions and things that that businesses should be focusing on going forward, a lot of smaller businesses obviously don't have an IT department in-house. Most probably don't of the smaller side. What are some of the resources and types of consultants they could hire and help them get set up for, not just fix my problem today, but like help me long term?
Yeah, and like with accountants and lawyers and numerous other business service providers, outsourced IT firms are available across the country to help these small businesses out. Our clients have anywhere from 5 computer systems to 1,000 computer systems, and so these businesses, they really just want to focus on doing what they do best, and why should they have to worry about IT? It's an area where they can partner and bring in somebody that has the skills, has the expertise to make sure that that they can succeed. And I would just encourage people to ask, as you seek out an IT partner, make sure you're asking some key questions. Make sure you ask them about their cybersecurity strategy. Gregg mentioned cybersecurity awareness training. Are these people going to provide that for you? Are they going to provide you with regular strategic planning sessions? Not just on cybersecurity, certainly that needs to be a part of it, but around your technology roadmap and plan as a whole, making sure that you're strategically engaging with technology to grow your business there, and at a very high level, of course. So it's not just about finding somebody that can make your email work or make sure that your computer's working, but somebody that can look at your business strategy and help you incorporate technology in it to help you become successful.
And Mike, one thing I just want to piggyback to, we talked a lot about people who are, deciding to stay from home and be dispersed, but some companies have made the decision or already have or are going to come back to the office. And some of the technology stand out to me all around conference rooms. So video conferencing units, really important. You'd asked about that. And at home, it's less important, right? You can get by with a good headset and a good camera, all for like under $300 between the two. But in the office, what's going to be interesting is the concept of a video conference room used to be you could shove a lot of people together and get as many around a table. And now you're going to have a unit that, let's say you used to be able to sit 5 comfortably. Now it's 3 because you got a social distance 6 feet apart. So whether you're going to use the software is important to lock in, like Cisco WebEx, Teams, and Zoom. One of those is great, right? Google Hangouts. But in addition, from the hardware, Cisco, Logitech, and Poly, they're 3 great brands that have great solutions. Specifically, like Logitech, just off the top of my head, they have these tap room bundles. Very basic. You can start with a basic unit, get to a small conference room, medium or large. And I think everyone's going to have to buy one size up from what they used to have or used to having. Otherwise, you can't have the people in the room because it's got to be a little bit wider of a view. And then the one other thing I'll just mention is like a room scheduling software, because something that is at least a habitual thing I've seen in many offices is when a room is, people huddle around a room ready to get in, and things like just having a check-in on the front of the room, a kiosk that you can actually press a button to say if you're in and check it out or know if it's open without having to duck in, because that kind of stuff, you're going to want to keep some social distancing guidelines out there, and technology can help you support it. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And Gregg, to your point there, the meetings are getting a little bit different. I don't know how many of you have attended a hybrid meeting, but you really need to make sure you have the right technology in place so that you can have those hybrid meetings be successful, so that the people that are virtual can have as good experience as the people that are attending in person. And the old technology that we were all using before this just doesn't quite cut it for those hybrid meetings.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, there's always prior to this, right, where you were the dude that would call in, or in most companies, it matters the company and how well they were set up, but a lot of times you ended up not being able to hear, not having a great experience, right? But now, like you were talking about, Gregg, having software and having hardware that can film a room with people socially distanced, hear them correctly, all of that, and then maybe there's another 4 or 5 people that are from home at that same meeting, right? So there's just it's kind of we've been focusing a lot on the people at home and them working so far, but there's a lot of businesses that are starting to reopen partially. Maybe it's voluntarily, maybe it's all those different things, and we at the chamber actually just reopened yesterday, voluntary basis, all controlled. I haven't gone in yet, but I'm going to go next week. But but they put in a number of different software things like you're talking about to be able to schedule when you're coming in. You can schedule rooms to work out of, stuff like that. But they had to put a lot of effort into doing that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and Spencer is spot on that the hybrid meeting is a very different beast, because when everyone was together, it's one thing, and when everyone's remote, it's another. Like we're all getting used to the awkwardness of the you're on mute, double mute, and then also like whose turn is to talk. But you can also learn to feel it out. But when you go back to where some people are, you're gonna do some change management training, and some of that's not a technology, it's just the learnings. But you have to discuss that. How do you if the person in the room is leading the meeting, how do you check with the people on? It used to be on the phone. Hopefully now we're all going to video, but check with the people on the call first. Does anyone have anything from the phone, right, before you go on around the room? Because if you don't, they get left out. And as someone who I'm based out of New Jersey in a smaller office for CEW, about 100, 200 people, versus often I was on calls with people that were in our corporate headquarters that has thousands of people. And there's often 8 people in the room there and me on the call, right? And so it's very easy to be pushed aside, and you don't want that. That's the whole point of having different people contribute. And there is ways to have technology assist that as well. Like you're on mute. I don't know if that was an ironic thing just to
I was
call
just
out
trying
for
to
what I
prove
showed
the
you.
point there. Yeah, how annoying it is. Yeah, I mean, I think it just becomes even more complex, right? To try to think out, solving for the people at home, and then also trying to get the right experience and the right atmosphere for the people that are at the office. So, last question before we open it up for everybody, and for the audience, please start. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. Feel free to start sprinkling them in there, and we'll get to them. Really, a closer for both of you. This is a little more thinking longer term. Companies we're talking about all the technological advancements that they're doing as the business environment changes. If you look ahead 5 years, right? Like, which of those advancements are going to be the most crucial for the future? It's hard to know, but what do you think?
I mean, I'll say that 1, cloud, and 2, security, right? And there's all kinds of technological advancements coming, and every one of them, there's and you better secure it statement afterwards. It's funny, we were just having a discussion about all these new printers we just got from HP. And there's this security function of, if you're in the office, you have to put a code in, if it's secure, all this stuff. But more importantly, as people working from home and they're now getting more home printing, well, I'm printing over Wi-Fi, over Bluetooth. And is that locked down? Is it secure? Because that could be a back way to get into the network. And I mean, I didn't think about things we laugh at home since life is home. A smart refrigerator, like some people love it, but even your appliances at home are a security risk. And the real thing is anyone going to target you and your refrigerator? Maybe not. But over time, the more devices we have, when we have wearables, things like your smartwatch, and different devices, that's going to keep getting better and better and smaller and smaller. And more, we're going to end up with a headset that just like clicks on your ear and that's it. A camera that maybe somehow is only like worn on your head, or I don't know, like these technologies that'll exist a few years ago, we can't even predict. But what's going to happen is you're going to have to keep them secure, because every one is a point of entry for a hacker if you become desirable. And one thing we've seen with hacking and anything else, the bad guys are going down and down the scale of who they're trying to hack. They're not all trying to hack Target anymore, right? Thanks to ransomware, it's very efficient to go after a volume of businesses and not just a quantity, or a quality rather. So they will go after as many small businesses as they can, hold them ransom, and try to get money. And that's why you have to be prepared for that. So I think that's going to be one that's going to impact everyone. It's how will we lock it all down as technology enhances.
Yeah, Totally agree. Spencer, anything to add there? Thoughts?
Yeah, Greg, you hit on a couple things, and you mentioned the Internet of Things. More and more devices and thermostats and toasters, and I know my wife is so happy that our washer and dryer she can now like turn on and turn off when we're away from home. And the Apple Watch, I don't know about you, but it's changed my life. But the Internet of Things is really, really revolutionizing things. So that's a huge thing to continue to watch. Cloud computing, which you also touched on, Greg. Businesses should really be keeping their eyes out for all these apps that can just automate or little processes inside their business, or just make them that much more efficient or that much more nimble than their competition to help them win. So the cloud's going to continue to change everything. And as you mentioned, we got to secure it all. That's the biggest thing. Is security is going to keep becoming a larger and larger risk. And when it comes to security, businesses can do two really simple things to help kind of lock things down. And number one, that's use a password manager and turn on multi-factor authentication for anything you can turn on multi-factor authentication for. So if any businesses really just want to do two simple things to take some steps in that direction, I would recommend that. And just to go backwards a little bit, we talked about, using cloud products, using apps. But inside of a business, you got to be careful that your employees just aren't kind of going rogue. And now all of a sudden you have about, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 different little apps or software programs that people have found and are using. So you need to make sure you have some sort of approval process in place or policies for kind of keeping that type of thing in check.
And we on that note, like identity management getting bigger and bigger, right? And you have both where people want, single sign-on, and they also want monthly form authentication, right? They want to be able to log in once, but they also want you to check 3 times that it's you. Mm-hmm. But that's going to keep going. But MDM, mobile device management, I think is going to continue to be big. And whether that's integrated in with some of the things Microsoft's doing, for example, it can be integrated with your suites you buy today, or separate on its own device. Like Jamf, for example, is great for Apple devices. That's huge, because if people are going to use their phone as their personal and work device, you need to be able to know what you can wipe if you need to. You need to be able to kick things off and also protect your IP, right? And this is important for companies. Sometimes the biggest thing you have, whether it's your customer list, your unique way you go about things, or anything other documentation, you've got to be able to secure that. And even at minimum, lock down the phone. You might lose the device, but you don't want to lose what's on there, right? And let other people get access to it. So MDM software is a big one there. Any kind of disk encryption, whether it's on a notebook or a BitLocker, there's a lot of ways to secure it. And that's the other thing. We've seen both customers go to single partners, manufacturers that try to get everything, which you can do, and some go best of class and have a hybrid solution, which is totally fine too. These softwares are designed to work together, right? Like it's not like choosing a best-in-class solution different for MDM than your endpoint security is okay to do. They do overlap and then they do work well together. But I think that's what's going to keep enhancing is security tools that are out there. It's important you stay up to date on those, because the days of just getting antivirus are gone. Like that is not what it takes to keep yourself secure. That's table stakes.
So definitely a theme for everything is security, right? It's like no matter what the stuff we got now, the current life, it's all the new stuff that's being invented and that's going to be invented to make all this better. But it's being able to control that IP and that employee kind of ecosystem, right? Of all the touch points and all the different technology things that are going on, it's super important. So why don't we jump to some audience questions now? Got a few in here, and also just for everyone in the audience, if you do want to participate directly, just raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute and do it that way too. So totally fine to make it conversational. So let's start with, I feel like this is a good one because we're talking about, we've been hitting a lot of kind of the spectrum of size of business, right? So a question here was, what system is best for a business to consider as a beginner level tech adopter? We're still filing paper copies of everything. Help. What is your thoughts, guys?
Yeah, so when it comes to paper, one, you got to look at what your own industry regulations are, because some require paper copies of things, right, and things to kept on file. For healthcare, there's HIPAA compliance, right? There's different legal ramifications. But on that, by the way, we'll talk about know your policy and know your rules, because some of the other thing that's newer in the last, I'll call it 10 years now, but when you have to or should dispose of things, because there's retention policies, and then there's going to be when to wipe it. There's a lot of documentation management software out there that can help you, whether you want to archive things or how you want to save them and store them. But then there's also a time period where it becomes a liability to keep some things. Like our email retention policy at CW is 10 years. And internally, we keep everything for 10 years. After that, it goes off to a server. But I want to say it's like 20 years on the server, and then we wipe it. Because after that, you're now liable that you have this stuff out there and that you could have accessed it. So you have to be careful of what you keep and what you don't. Look, if it comes down to a bunch of paper that you want to convert, there's also companies you can outsource to that will literally come into an office and scan things in for you and set it all up, versus you investing in the hardware if it's a one-time move. If it's an ongoing, yeah, you should invest in a good scanner. There's a lot of documentation scanners, even things people going to business card scanners, which are very inexpensive, very small these days. Because I know there's people that still have their desks full of business cards, and some of them went home and they're like, oh my God, I don't know anyone's phone number, right? Or I don't have my Rolodex anymore, when they were physically doing it, and learning how to just incorporate that into your Outlook or any other device you use for contact management. But I think that's part of it, is decide, are you investing or should you outsource? And I think that's for a lot of stuff for small businesses. You got to make the decision of what are you going to do frequently enough that it's worth an investment versus what makes sense to outsource. And the analogy I always give, if you talk about being in a large building, there was a time where everyone's payroll had a janitor on their payroll, right? They would come around and clean up and take care of your garbage and anything else in a cubicle environment or anywhere else. And eventually people realized, well, my core competency is making widgets. It's not throwing things out. It's not garbage, or managing the janitor. So instead they outsource. They pay a company X dollars an hour, X dollars a month, and somebody comes in every night and cleans the office and take things out. And by the way, very relevant right now, cleaning and keeping things, sanitary and everything else. But the point is, you got to decide what is worth outsourcing as a small business and what is worth having the core competency yourself. Because a mistake you'd make is trying to be an expert at everything or trying to own everything. And tying it back to the question being asked, that's what I'm saying. Do you buy it or do you rent it, so to speak? Do you need to invest in a piece of hardware? Because you can get a scanner, you can get a document management software piece, or someone else can do it for you, and you've got to just decide what's the better investment for you.
Yeah. Yeah, Spencer, with all the clients that you have, right? There's really, and I think we kind of morph this question a little bit with a couple of the other ones, where it's kind of like, where do you start? If in fact you have been what we were describing at the top of the meeting, it is a bit of a free for all. It is a bit of everybody's working hard, keeping the business running. We're actually still in business. We're still going. Like that's been job one for all these business owners and their teams. But kind of when you go into these different engagements, kind of, is there a theme of like where you start?
Yeah, and we kind of like to go into a business and we have a process of just checkboxing through all of their technology and making recommendations. We'll go in, we'll do an initial findings meeting. We'll say, hey, here's what's happening inside your organization. Here's where you need to mature, whether it be in the technology you're using for your operations or your security or your hardware, your software, your cloud. So there's quite an extensive process that we go through. So having a good partner to do those things, I think, is very important. And I think another aspect of this is making sure you're leveraging your industry associations. So, go to your industry associations and talk to the people that are best in class. Talk to the people who are growing. Ask them, hey, what new technologies or new solutions have you implemented? What changes have you been making in your operations? And, I'm a big fan of copying. So, it was frowned upon in school, but in real life, the most successful people, they're the best at it, right? So find those people who are doing it well and do it just like them. And last but not least, kind of embrace youth and technology inside your organization. If there's younger people working inside your organizations, and ask them, hey, how could we revolutionize this? How could we bring this into the 21st century? So those would be the three recommendations I would make is, get a good solid technology partner, get really involved in your industry associations and copy the best in class, and embrace youth and technology.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And it's very industry specific, right? I mean, or it can be, right? Like if you find a business that's like mine, the same type of businesses, they're gonna have a lot of the same, they're going through the same problems, right? So that I can totally see an association or a just business group or networking type of thing where you can get a lot of kind of insights from businesses like yourselves.
Hey, Mike, I'll just mention on that. I mean, I love industries that actually don't view their competition as competition, but more of an ally. And, the startup community is a good example of one where they are constantly helping each other out, mentoring each other. Part of it is because people hop from one to another at different times. They're going to interact with each other again. And there's room for them all to succeed, right? And part of so the one big thing I'll say for everyone is, especially when you're at home, you have a little more time because you don't have commutes and other things, get involved with something and jump on industry best practice calls, jump on webinars more than ever. Like check LinkedIn, you'll see things. If it interests you as a topic, it doesn't hurt to jump on and listen to it and learn, because you'll get some best tips and best practices, and you might make a connection that's going to help you down the road. So I really think peer-to-peer, that's just so great to be able to exchange knowledge of here's what's worked for me, here's what hasn't. And you can get so many great answers too from message boards and other places just saying, here's a problem I'm having. You'll get 6 opinions real quick. And you got to make judgment right from there, but at least you get a starting point of what other people think about it.
Awesome. So I'll throw in a few more audience questions here. Interesting one just came in. I'm mobile and I would like to make sure my customers' payments are secure. How does a mobile business maximize security?
Spencer, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, we've covered it a couple times, but mobile device management, I think, is extremely important. And being able to remotely wipe data if you have a rogue employee, or if or if a device gets lost, etc. Making sure that your transmissions and your devices are fully encrypted. Utilizing cloud technologies to accept payments, etc. So that way, hopefully, your device is actually never in possession of the payment information. Can be really important. So I think those are some of the biggest keys. Embracing those cloud partners who have already vetted the technology and the security for you, and mobile device management and mobile device encryption.
Gotcha. Yeah, really just being able to control, not control, but really just have the ability to see what's going on from a security perspective on all the mobile devices and have some uniformity for the employees' devices. Seems like that is a huge thing. Age-old question: is it better to have a Mac or a PC for a small business? Which is a loaded question, which wasn't fair to ask. But
I wonder if my wife actually asked that one. I've literally switched from a PC, which I've always used. I've always been a Microsoft guy, to a Mac in the past week.
Wow.
Growing pains. So I'm actually living this right now. And I really love my text messages and my photos and all of that, like coming right to my computer, whereas it didn't when I had a Windows computer. But man, learning this double tap and double swipe and also there is just weird. So we'll see. The verdict is out on my side.
So the answer is either. Right. And here's what's great. There are way less differences from an infrastructure standpoint today than ever before. It's not like the person who has the Mac is the redhead stepchild anymore, can't access things. The technologies work. Now, that being said, yeah, it's great to have a standard, right? And that's always the dilemma of a company and an IT department of how much do you give freedom and comfort to the end user versus how much do you have uniformity. But it depends. One of the things that are value to companies is letting people buy their own device, choose their own device, bring your own device, especially coming out of college. I mean, what's interesting and shifted, I'm still on PCs. I'll just say that. I have peers who have gone to Macs. And second Spencer said, in the last week I switched. I knew he's not going to be happy with it because it's the last week. That's change management. He might have a different opinion a year from now. I think it's whatever you get comfortable with, because both can do what you need. What you're going to find is kids coming out of school, I don't want to call them kids, but our new workforce, Apple has spent a lot of money and time investing in the education system to make sure that all of these children in school, young school, elementary school, are working on Macs and PCs, going to colleges that have computer labs that are all Macs, right? And then as they get up, more and more people are used to the Mac. So their answer is like, why does this mouse not have the double click, or why does it have two buttons? And it changes. So you have to be ready for that you're going to have people who come into your workforce that are very used to one thing. And if you can accommodate it, it makes it easier so that that's not what's getting in the way of them doing their job. And you want to be able to offer options. Now, there are sometimes you have to come a decision tree too. I mentioned Jamf earlier today. Jamf is an MDM solution only for Macs, and it's awesome for Macs. And if that's your standard and someone comes into the PC, you've got a problem, right? And you're going to have two MDM solutions. And that's the real decision point is it more of a pain for you to make the end user switch over to the Mac to join you, or for you to manage two MDM solutions? And you got to decide which one is worth it and which one is not. But the good news is there isn't a right answer. The right answer is what you're comfortable with in your business. Both can do what you need to do these days.
Yeah, and just to dovetail on that, Greg, we have 500 business customers, and all of them are using different things, Macs and PCs and HP and Lenovo and Dell. And so we actually, just to be able to support our customers better, are driving that we have to have a mixed environment as well, that a certain percentage of our field technicians and a certain percentage of our help desk technicians have to be working on Macs versus PCs, just so we're developing that diverse expertise that we see out there in our customer base.
And no matter what, everybody, even if parts of some people's jobs were not that focused on the machine they were using before, this current world is, everyone has a computer. Everybody, even just if all they do is sit on these all day, right? They've got a they've got a computer and they got to be able to manage and be able to use it. So. And
by the way, Mike, I will mention the other answer is you use software to make it completely irrelevant. Things like Citrix and other environments where it's a remote desktop, right, or DVI, or any kind of remote desktop management. Then it doesn't matter what they're using because they're accessing all the apps remotely and through the cloud. And now you've said use any kind of machine you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And actually, a good question that kind of fits with that is one here that they've just migrated from Google to Microsoft and have all neat things inside. Where's a good place to go learn what they can do? Is it consultants? Is it webinars? Is it videos? It's probably a little bit of everything, right?
So I'll just say, because we do this all the time. So one, if you're talking about like, how do we get the most out of Excel? I mean, YouTube is got you answers. Google, like you Google anything about Microsoft and you will get the answer in a YouTube video on how to do it. And you don't have to spend any money to do that. Now, if you're saying, how do I implement and deploy SharePoint into my company? Different question. And that is where you want to pay someone for implementation services. Because there's also, I want to stress, there's a software piece. There's also a cultural piece, a change management piece. And even like SharePoint's a good example where when we do our own service deployments for that, we actually have someone who plans the kickoff party and talks about how you're going to kick it off and who's going to own content and how there's going to be someone from HR who has to own part of it and someone from this part of the business own it and going to be constantly supplying feeds of information, because if it's stagnant, it goes away and no one uses it. So there's parts of it you have to think about, but that's two different questions, right? Like, what am I doing to implement a new thing that I want everyone to be able to use ongoing versus how do I do a VLOOKUP? How do I do a pivot table in Excel? Like, and those are things you can find for free. For us, we made an investment. We partnered with LinkedIn with their platform called LinkedIn Learning. So we have access to thousands of online trainings that people can access, and we both let them self-serve and pick things themselves. Or we also assign, or sometimes we assign with specific initiatives, right? We had a diversity thing recently and we gave out some trainings around that. But in addition to that, We also have times where we give the recommended learnings for the month, and we give them all using the same platform. But I just had just this week, someone wanted to learn more about Power BI, and they found in the LinkedIn Learning there was a Power BI training, and they actually were able to get up and running on Power BI.
Yeah, great stuff there, Gregg. And just as a little addition there is we're all on Microsoft Teams right now. Just go ahead and click that little apps button over on the left. There are so many cool little add-ons and apps and bots that you can inject into Microsoft Teams to, manage your meetings better, to take your notes better, to whiteboard, to take surveys among the people in your company or your organization. So just start looking through those apps and those bots, even in Microsoft Teams. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've discovered a bunch of them inside Teams that I've actually started using over the last few months, as it was right in front of me all the time, right? And started playing around with it just as a user. But I believe we might have a question, a hand raised from Imelda Kaiser. If you still have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and fire away.
No, you answered it. It was the Mac or PC for small businesses. That was my question. And the other fun question was, did any of you guys watch Social Dilemma? And that's a separate conversation.
I actually haven't watched it yet. I saw it on Netflix when I was scrolling through, and I think it was one of those nights where I wanted something a little more like House Hunters or something. But actually, it does look interesting. I should watch it. Thanks for the question, and definitely anybody else wants to jump in, feel free to raise your hand. I think as we're kind of going through these things, we're definitely seeing a lot of themes, right? There's obviously one around security. There's one around mobile, just in general, right? And figuring out what is your sort of mobile device policy, which maybe wasn't as big of a deal before, and now it's sort of a bigger deal now. I think to that end, there's a question about employees installing things on their phone, and should you prevent them from doing certain things for a company-owned phone, of course. I know this is a theme that we've had a lot of mobile device management, but what do you guys think? And that's obviously a bit of a culture thing too, right? If that hadn't been an enforcement before, and then switching into that.
Yeah, and it's certainly up to the business whether they want what they want in their BYOD and their MDM policies. Our BYOD policy here at our company is, hey, you bring your own cell phone, but we're going to put some mobile device management software on it, and we're going to let you know you have to agree to it. And here are the 4 apps that we can control deleting or changing data on. We can't see any of your personal information, but we can wipe your email. We can wipe these files, etc. And so that's how we really addressed it. We use Microsoft's mobile device management tools that come with Microsoft Office 365, but Gregg has mentioned some other ones that are really good. But when it comes to having those BYOD policies, those mobile device management policies, and just the cybersecurity policies in general, go to sans.org/information-security-policy. And that's www.sans.org/information-security-policy. Tons of free templates to give you a starting point on building out those policies and procedures. And I'm sure Gregg has some great information to add.
Yeah, I'd say that we were using MOS 360 for a long time, which is a great MDM solution, but frankly more enterprise focused for larger companies. We're actually in the middle of switching over to Intune, the Microsoft solution, right? But we mentioned Jamf before. Mobile Iron is another great solution. VMware has one as well. There's a lot of good options. I think that the idea of there being personal devices and professional devices completely separated and not touching each other at all is kind of outdated. It's really hard to do that. And the reality is, if you want your employees to be more accessible, you've got to let them do it on their terms and use their personal devices. So we have a policy like, if you want email on your phone, you're installing MDM, because the second you have email, you have some of our proprietary information. And, like you said, Spencer, we acknowledge and make them acknowledge that we could wipe their stuff, all the stuff. We've had to wipe a true wipe on a phone, I think twice in the history of CW, and we have 10,000 employees right now. And we haven't had to, right? But it is possible. So we do want to be clear on what it is and isn't and what it does. But we don't. The question we always get is, are you going to monitor it, or are you going to know what apps I have, and are you going to check my stuff? Like, what do you have, and why are you worried so much about it? But no, we're not. So that's okay. We're only worried about our stuff. All right. We don't have time to worry about your stuff. Your fantasy football app and your dating app is fine. Like, we're not worried about it.
I think, one thing that we touched on a bit at the top of the session, but it's probably worth circling back to is there's a question here about Zoom. That is majority of, it seems like the majority of organizations and events use Zoom for virtual meetings and webinars, but there have been concerns about security. Are those valid? ? And I think it's a little bit to Gregg, you were talking about at the top, same with you, Spencer. I'll get to you first, Spencer. There's the free and paid versions, right? All that stuff. But any thoughts as people are evaluating that? Because maybe they've already got this figured out, right? Maybe 70% do, but there might be 30 or 40% that still have a bit of a bootstrapping going on.
Yeah, we're a Teams shop at Wasatch IT, and I would just question everything that all the technology that comes out of China. The way their culture and their government is set up is that, hey, the government has access to all the information that any company has, right? Here in the United States, we're able to keep our data private. There, it's a lot different, and Zoom certainly has a lot of Chinese ties. They've addressed a lot of their security concerns, from my understanding, and so many out there believe it's really secure. But I don't know. I tend to just be a little less trusting.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is look, there are free versions versus pay for it, and you get different things with it. But even with the free version, you can set it up so that you need a password, and at minimum, if you shouldn't have meetings that people can just jump in on, right? They need to have been invited specifically as that end user, or they need to have a password to get in. And that's a policy thing, right? You can set that up and say, if, like a lot of companies, look, they were scrambling for a video solution. They used the free version of Zoom. That's fine. And there's some limitations when you have a password of, I think you can only do it for 90 minutes or something like that. Maybe it's 30 at a time, but okay. And eventually you got to pay for it if you want the bigger version. But you have to have some kind of security, because you do have the Zoom bombing and other things going on. And frankly, like, Zoom has changed a lot just in the last 6 months, just because what they had to do with schools and everything else using it too. So they gotten better with security. I think you're better off in some other platforms. That's my own personal preference. But there's things like, for example, we're a Cisco WebEx shop. And what that means is there's been days I'm on 5 different platforms in one day, depending on who runs the meetings, right? I've been AWS is one of our partners, and I go on Chime with them. So there's a few different things you can go on. But with that being said, I think people get comfortable with one. So the second I go to Microsoft Teams, which is a great platform, adjust and calibrate, versus I could do WebEx in the dark. Like, I know where every button is until they do an upgrade, by the way, over the weekend one day, and then I know where nothing is for another day. There can be secure platforms, but you should look at the security and make sure there's something that is preventing just anybody from showing up. But you can certainly get by with Zoom, but I'd make sure you're at least setting up that you need a password.
Yeah. And I think and as this is, we were talking about at the top, this isn't, even if everything gets better very fast, right? We've all kind of figured out there's a lot of efficiencies in this. There's inefficiencies too, but you want to have a good platform. No matter what, you're going to want to do calls this way, and especially if it's probably going to be hybrid for quite a while, right? Of people in the office and people at home. So with that, I think we've reached the end of our time here. We're at 3:00. I think I'll go ahead and wrap up if that's okay with you guys. Spencer, Gregg, you amazing conversation. I really appreciate all your insights, all your knowledge, and hopefully the group here that's been with us has gotten. I've got a lot of nice comments in the chat. So it looks like we definitely been able to answer some good questions as we've gone along, and want to wish everybody in the audience thanks again for being a part of the Big Week for Small Business. It's been a great event so far. Tomorrow there's more breakout sessions starting at 12 p.m. Eastern. Definitely go to growwithco.com. I'll do my little plug for the site I helped build for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce called Co. That has a lot of information around technology and everything else for running your business. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.